Our second lead story tonight on the News9 Plus show is the brand new COVID variant JN.1. The question here at this stage is, do we need to panic? What do we need to do, bearing in mind a brand new mutation of the COVID-19 virus is doing the rounds? Bear in mind this JN.1 is a Omicron subvariant of BA.2.86's mutation. So how deadly is JN.1 and how deadly is it spread? How quick is it spread? And is it time to press the panic button? And to understand that better, I have a couple of very special guests joining us tonight on the News9 Plus show. We have Mr. Rajeev Jayadevan, Co-Chairman, National IMA COVID Task Force and former President, IMA Kochi, Kerala. We also have Dr. Chandrakant Leharia, epidemiologist and public health expert joining us tonight. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on the News9 Plus show. I'm going to begin with Mr. Rajeev Jayadevan simply because the first cases in the country have been found in Kerala. In fact, the first time JN.1 got detected was a 79-year-old woman in Kerala. Tell us from your perspective how much cause for concern is the JN.1, because the Kerala Health Minister had apparently said that it is not a cause for concern.
Well, it depends which angle you're looking at. Concern can come either from the point of view of the community, the point of view of the treating doctors, the relatives, or the administrators, or the country as a whole. So if you look at it from the community, from an individual standpoint, the clinical profile, which means the symptoms are not different from what was seen before with other versions of Omicron. So in other words, some people have no symptoms. Others have what's called flu-like symptoms, which is different from common cold. Flu-like symptoms, everybody knows that. Severe tiredness, which puts people in bed for a couple of days, gets them off work, requires them to take leave. But that doesn't land people in the hospital for the most part. But some individuals whose health is not so good as others tend to destabilize and reach the hospital. And such individuals may spend a few days in the hospital and also get discharged. And that's the profile we are seeing now. Deaths directly from COVID, these recent versions of COVID have become extremely rare, but that does not mean that COVID doesn't cause deaths. It can destabilize people and then push them in the wrong direction. That is true. But the kind of severe pneumonias we used to see with Delta variant in 2021, we don't see that anymore. That's a fact. So that is the community side. From the epidemiology side, I know Dr. Larry is here as well. It's his interest as well. This JN.1, from a genetics standpoint, it's very different from almost anything that has circulated commonly before. So that entitles this variant to a degree of respect which some recent variants were not perhaps entitled to. So I would watch it very carefully. There is no need to push the panic button anywhere. The questions are the following. Because it's so different, we know that it has the ability to infect people in spite of previous vaccination or natural infection or both. The question is, how big is this ability in real world conditions outside of laboratories, and how deeply will it penetrate into populations? So these are two fundamental questions for which I do not have an answer yet, and the world is looking at the answers of these two questions as we speak. But from the clinician standpoint, they're easy to treat. They don't require much medications. Most of them can be treated at home. It is not overwhelming the hospital systems yet. But I would say this, along with this, influenza and several other viruses are also circulating. Influenza has been particularly severe this season as well.
Okay, influenza has been particularly serious. Dr. Chandrakant Leharia, from your perspective, because now some are asking for the kind of COVID protocols that existed about 3 years ago to be brought back to deal with the JN.1 variant. Would you agree with that?
Well, I do not agree to that hypothesis or that suggestion. But let me put this in some more context. The thing is that SARS-CoV-2, or the virus which called COVID-19, is a respiratory virus. And most of the respiratory viruses, once they find a community or they start circulating, they continue in the community, though at the rate of transmission may be low or high. For example, another respiratory virus is like a flu virus. Once they are in setting, they continue to be there. That's one. So respiratory viruses, once entered into a community, they stay there. Second thing is that many of the viruses, including SARS-CoV-2, flu viruses, they are prone to keep changing. The mutations keep happening. So we will keep hearing about a new variant, subvariant, sublineages, and that's what is happening with SARS-CoV-2. That happens with the flu virus also. In fact, what is very assuring that the last SARS-CoV-2 variant of concern was Omicron. That emerged in November 2021, more than 2 years from today. Like we had the last variant of concern. Since then, we are seeing a subvariant, different variations or mutations in that virus, but they have not caused major concern. In fact, let's compare again with the flu and SARS-CoV-2. The flu viruses like cause annual rise in the cases, like every year we see, but at least for the last 2 years in the SARS-CoV-2, we have not seen that kind of surge or increase. But we will definitely keep seeing such kind of minor spike. So what we are seeing with JN.1 is the subvariant of a subvariant of Omicron, but it is a type of Omicron. Now, when it comes to the concern or worry, of course, any circulating pathogen, be it SARS-CoV-2, flu, or any pathogen, need to be tracked by the government. Any change in the transmission, epidemiology, genetic change should be noted by the government. So that's what is happening at the national level. When government decided to give an advisory, give advice that genomic sequencing should be done for all the cases or cases which are being reported in the country, which is a standard protocol which should be done to track the epidemiology of disease. But as Dr. Jaydevan also flagged that whether this is a concern for citizen or not, I do not think this is a concern for citizen. In a public health system, any emergence or any rise in the cases of any disease in any part of the world, in the current this case, JN.1 case, Singapore and some other countries, should be watched carefully what Indian government is doing, what the advisory or the entire discourse is all about. But for citizen, nothing has changed. Final part is that any pathogen, be it SARS-CoV-2 or subvariant, pose higher risk for individual who have a pre-existing illness. So elderly, someone who is in long-term treatment, someone with comorbidity. Whether it's a SARS-CoV-2, JN.1, or flu, or any other condition, circulating virus, all of those individuals who are at higher risk should take precaution for any circulating pathogen. And for me, JN.1 is just another pathogen which is circulating, and we should be careful.
Okay, Mr. Jaydevan, the reason why I asked you about pushing the panic button is that we've already seen 5 deaths. We've had just about a 2,000 odd caseload per day, but we've already witnessed 5 deaths, and that's the reason why the questions are being asked on: are we doing enough? Are we, correcting the mistakes we made last time in terms of the spread of COVID in India?
Yeah, the deaths that have been reported, I do not have their clinical details with me. These are older individuals. I do not have what kind of existing illness. In fact, I do not have information on what kind of existing illness they might have had. The reason why I said we need not hit the panic button listening to the story about deaths is that what we saw with the Delta variant was people in perfectly good health were suddenly catching a pneumonia that nobody could treat, and they were dying. And that was a panic setting, and which we have come a long way since then. It is partly because, as Dr. Larry said, the Omicron variant has substantially different biological properties, and also Omicron was coming at a stage where many people were vaccinated, and the people who were in the community had already survived COVID to a large extent. So overall, the individual risk is low in terms of what could potentially happen if you get infected. But from a community level, what we should do is to make sure the extent of spread is controlled to the best of our abilities. And that includes a little bit of care in social gatherings, keeping people shielded if they are vulnerable until the wave passes, watching carefully how high the wave will climb, how quickly it climbs. All this is data in evolution. And also to build the genomic picture in India, because if you look at the genomic profile of the last wave that occurred in India in April 2023, April and May, it was almost exclusively XBB, which is another version of Omicron. But this particular one, JN.1, is completely different. It is vastly different from all these variants. So whether this difference translates into outcomes, that's the part that we have some uncertainty about.
Okay, there is uncertainty about the outcomes. Dr. Chandrakant Laharia, the only question I have to ask at this stage is that should we go back to a mask wearing protocol? And more importantly, how can they always say prevention is better than cure? Is it time for people to get their vaccine shots? How do you sort of guard yourself against the JN.1 variant?
So what we need to remember that in the last 3+ years, like nearly 3+ years, all of us have been exposed to the various variants of SARS-CoV-2 at least 2 times or 3 times, and most importantly, all of us have been exposed to the Omicron variant. There is enough scientific or epidemiological data to argue that. So we have been exposed 2 or 3 times to SARS-CoV-2, and then nearly all adults have been vaccinated with 2 shots of COVID-19 vaccine, some with 3rd shot of COVID-19 vaccine. So with that kind of exposure, we can be fairly assured that there is a sufficient immune protection in individual against a subvariant. Having said that, there could be people who have a pre-existing illnesses, who are on long-term treatment, who could be at a greater risk. But current scientific evidence does not support that we should give additional shot of COVID-19 vaccine. I do not see any immediate reason that there is a need for additional shot of COVID-19 vaccine. As far as mask and other protocol is concerned, those are required at a time when a novel pathogen is emerging. Currently, like if someone want to wear mask, or rather air pollution is a bigger threat, and for that air pollution, people need to wear masks rather than SARS-CoV-2, which is circulating, SARS-CoV-2 subvariant, which is circulating in different parts of the world. It's a SARS-CoV-2 a much smaller threat. I also want to put in the context, in every day in India, approximately an estimated 28 to 30,000 deaths happen. Those deaths happen due to illnesses, but also natural deaths. So in comparison of those 28,000 deaths, like 5 deaths, and we do not even know whether those are related to COVID-19 or they are like SARS-CoV-2 positivity happen to be incidental finding in that. So we should be worrying about tuberculosis. Tuberculosis caused many deaths in a single day. So there are many bigger reasons to be worried right now, but I'm not discounting. I still want to highlight that government should definitely keep a watch, but citizens need not to worry. You follow standard precaution, you follow for any respiratory illness.
All right, that's the word coming in from Dr. Chandrakant Leharia, and I'm going to thank Mr. Leharia and Mr. Rajiv Jayadevan for taking time out to be with us here on the News9 Plus show to help us understand what the new COVID-19 variant JN.1 is all about.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.